Okay, everyone is seated and we'll get started. So today for our panel, we have our moderator, Chris Watkins, the CEO of Watkins Branding, Jonathan Baker, the marketing guy and mastermind of Mind Control from Monday Night Brewing, Brian Diggleman, he's the director of Digital Dank at Sweetwater Brewery, Jessica Miller, the marketing coordinator for Reformation Brewery, and Reed Ramsey, the founder of Beer Street Journal.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome to our session. If you guys want to also give a little bit of more information about how you guys got into social media, we'll kick it off from there.
Brian Diggleman, you might know me as Diggs because there's like 800 Brians at Sweetwater for some reason, and I got there last, so I kind of got last pick on the names. I came from a small agency that specialized in franchise PR, kind of fell into digital media because no one else was doing it there, so it was kind of a convenient fit. And been doing it ever since, so got into Sweetwater doing the same thing, started in digital media, but really kind of expanded the role into a lot of design work and even some field marketing aspects too. So I've been at Sweetwater for 2.5 years now, and yeah, I think it's research.
I'm Reed Ramsey. I created Beer Street Journal. I didn't come from an agency. 7 years ago, I was working, I actually studied physics and molecular biology in school. It turns out I like drinking more than I like research. So I do other research now, alcoholically, and started writing about beer, and I've grown into a national website on beer. 7 years in, the site has more than 75,000 posts viewed in all 50 states every day, and that's how I know everyone in here. Don't do that. Because every time that it was news or something like that, I kept calling. I knew Jonathan when he was brewing in his garage, and then Diggs came into Sweetwater, and I befriended him only to get the information needed for the site. That's all. And I know Jess before she worked for the brewery, and now that she works for the brewery, and so it's just beer all day, every day now.
Jonathan Baker, Monday Night Brewing. I started home brewing in our garage on Monday nights. I'm one of the founders of Monday Night, and that's kind of how we got going. And like 3 months into home brewing, we're like, oh, let's start a blog. And I was the only one with any kind of confidence in that realm. We have like a private equity guy and an operations consultant. So it fell to me, the marketing strategy guy, that was my day job, to start the blog. And then I kind of, started picking up all the social media stuff as well. And I still handle all of our social media except for Snapchat, because I do not understand it, like how it works.
I'm Jessica Miller. I'm with Reformation Brewery. I just joined them about 6 months ago. Prior to that, I was a blogger. I was a beer blogger. So I guess I was called an influencer in some circles. So that now I'm on the other side of it, where I'm trying to determine who those people are and the kinds of experiences that we can create to get them to talk about what we're doing. And I'm more of a go-between between our sales and marketing, so even though I co-manage some of the social media, it's not entirely overseen by me. We have brand managers, channel-specific brand managers who work on those things collaboratively with me, and I coordinate all the campaigns and schedule to sort of content that goes out through that.
Now, you guys run very different brands as it relates to, what types of beers you guys do, and in Reed's respect, the beer blog. How are you guys using social media and I guess digital marketing, specific types of things that you guys are doing with your particular brewery?
I've got the mic, so I'll start. We use Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Those are kind of our big three. And Facebook, we've got 33,000 followers, Twitter's 16,000, and then Instagram 6,500. So that's kind of the order in which we prioritize them as well. And we started using social media because we didn't have any money back in the day, and that's still primarily why we use it. Is like, we didn't have any money, but we were able to, I guess, be interesting enough to where people wanted to follow us, and now it's actually this great market that we have at our fingertips. So we'll use it for polls. Actually, when we were developing our brand, we had these different logo variations, and we'd use social media for people to vote on them. We use it to keep people updated on what's going on at the brewery, new beer releases. We use it to make fun of Sweetwater, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And really just to be human. We don't, we're a little irreverent, probably in a different way that some of these other brands are irreverent, I would say, but people want to interact with a human, and so that's kind of who we try to be.
So much like Jonathan said, budget is a real factor in craft beer. If you look at Sweetwater, we're the 19th largest craft brewery out of about 4,500 in America, and I have a hard time getting budget to do pretty much anything. So those other 44, whatever, 100 breweries, I imagine, have a pretty hard time too. So in the same way, we really use social media initially as a free alternative to traditional press releases, putting stuff on the wire, even so far as buying billboards or print ads, digital or TV ads, anything like that. And the response has been so successful that it's really been a continuing strategy where we still don't do much paid advertising. Now with Facebook's current structure, we do a little bit on there, and we'll buy a billboard every now and then in a new market. But by and large, we really don't need to spend that much on advertising because we can accomplish all of that through social media. And it's a pretty varied approach. We have a lot of different goals we try to accomplish on it, anywhere from brand awareness in new markets to selling merchandise. So there's a lot of different facets to the approach that we use at Sweetwater, and it's constantly shifting. Everything changes, even just from what network we're prioritizing. So Jonathan said that Facebook is really the one that they focus on the most right now. We're leaning towards Instagram just because we're getting better engagement there. We're growing the fastest on that network, and we're kind of seeing the best results when we do promotions on that channel. So it's all constantly evolving, and I'm sure it will continue to as we continue to grow.
From a different perspective, when it comes to, say, my website and beer itself, that I look at it from a perspective that everyone follows, especially if you're like a beer enthusiast or you just freaking love beer, you'll follow Sweetwater and you'll follow Monday Night and you'll follow Reformation and other breweries, but 24 hours in a day, and if you're following a brewery on the West Coast and a brewery on the East Coast, it's hard to kind of keep up with. California's 3 hours behind, and if you live in Atlanta, you could miss things by hours, depending on, like, that get press releases from California that come out at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. So Beer Street Journal's social media strategy has been a little bit more between so if Jonathan publishes a picture of a beer or a brew day, I have enough information to understand what the next brew is going to be and kind of condense it into a story. So if you miss Instagram from Sweetwater or Monday Night or an Instagram or something like that, we turn into a story that gives you an understanding of, like, what series this beer is going to come in, or is it a seasonal, or is this a year-round beer or something new? And so you still have a way to take that and then follow along with the breweries themselves, who might live tweet pictures from brew days and things. So we kind of point you in the direction. Because if you miss the one tweet that they'll send out about, say, their new Blood Orange IPA, then you might get lost on it, but then Beer Street Journal hopefully picks up the slack and gives you a method to follow all the news from Monday Night or Sweetwater. And between Instagram, because we go to a lot of breweries, I've been about 600 plus now, and it's always kind of like people seeing what it looks like on regular days from another avenue. Then what the brewery will put up, because there's 4,500 something breweries, and they all have a different. Some put a lot of stuff up, some don't touch Twitter. So kind of leading the brands back, or leading the people back to the brands a little bit, is kind of what we want to do, because beer, there's 70, 80,000 different beers brewed in the U.S. in a year. So you're going to miss some from your favorite breweries because there's so many now, and that's great. It's not like a bubble. It's just a lot of beers to drink, and so helping you sort it out, so when you go to the bar next time and you say, okay, I did hear about that beer, I do know that they're brewing that beer, or this is out now, kind of thing. It helps people engage with Monday Night and Sweetwater while they make fun of each other.
We use social media similarly to Monday Night in that we try to be human, but We're also investigating alternatives to having the main brand channel be the human voice, because it is more of a corporate, it's a logo, it's a sort of disembodied, impersonal by virtue of it being a brand channel. So we're looking at different alternatives to that right now, sort of built-in ambassadors who, their employees, we're spending our time online anyway, and so we're building out strategically a way for our employees to engage as built-in brand ambassadors for the brand, rather than having the main brand channel be the human element. Not that we're not human on the main channel, but just that it's a little less irreverent, I guess, than some of the other approaches that you could take. And we're using it for basic sort of informational sort of stuff, where we're announcing when we're open and changes to legislative processes that affect our business and things like that. But we're also using it to evaluate whether or not what we're doing is tied back to the values that we base our business off of. So if the content that is getting the most engagement is reinforcing the kind of values-based brand decisions that we're making, then we know that we're doing the right thing for where we want to be as a business. So we look at, we use those channels to measure specifically the engagement on particular events or emotional strategies, storytelling, things like that tie into our personal beliefs with the analytics that those channels provide.
And I kind of want to piggyback on something you said about regulation. We know that recent regulation changes have kind of caused a hiccup in what you guys are doing with to-go tours. I want to talk a little bit about what are you guys doing on social to kind of speak on that to your particular follower bases and to kind of combat that on social.
Yeah, so the quick update is July 1st, Georgia breweries were allowed to sell a tour that included beer to go. It wasn't selling a six-pack, it was selling a tour that you could then take with you and drink. And as of 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half, the Department of Revenue issued a policy bulletin that basically took away a lot of that right that was given to us in the law, and it was kind of a slap in the face. And they're refusing to have a meeting with us, and basically all the breweries are now either pissed off and drinking or depressed and drinking. And we kind of got together as a group and decided that we'd use social media to tell that story and get that out there. And I think Monday night we were actually the first to post a picture of our to-go tours being suspended, and it was basically Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and it was something that said, "We had a good run, Georgia. No more to-go tours." That was shared 80 times on Facebook, and it's had 21,000 people view it, which for us is astronomically high, and it's higher than anything else we've seen by far. And so, for me, that shows that there's a lot of interest in this, and now the question is, how do we harness that? But the fact that every other brewery is also doing something similar, I think shows kind of a united front among Georgia breweries, and seeing, if consumers can see businesses that they love that should be competitors working together, I think it's much easier for them to get behind that cause. The end.
So Jonathan just touched on it, but competitors working together. In Georgia, there's a Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, and we've got probably about 50 some odd organizations, somewhere around there, that we all pay dues to. And the real goal of that body is to further the cause of craft beer in the state of Georgia. We are one of only 4 states in the entire country that doesn't allow pint sales, right? Pint sales at the brewery. So you can't go to Sweetwater, Reformation, Monday night, and pay $4.50 and get a pint of beer and drink it there. You can do the tour, and recently, obviously, that changed. And the guild's real purpose is to try to advance that, not only because it's all what we would like to do and like to see happen, but because for small breweries, which the vast majority of breweries in Georgia are, that revenue stream of being able to sell that pint of beer, being able to sell beer to go, filling growlers is phenomenal. I mean, that's how most breweries get up and running. We're predating that a little bit at Sweetwater just because of our age and kind of got lucky, but most small breweries really rely on that source of income. So that's the main driving factor behind what the Guild is doing, and you will see a lot of interaction between Georgia breweries because we are all trying to fight that fight. We're in the minority as far as states go. We're losing breweries to other states because other states' laws are so much more friendly to breweries. So we're trying to figure out how we can come together, and obviously at the end of the day, Jonathan might say he would prefer you have one of his beers over mine. I would never say such a thing like that.
I would say that. And I'm saying it now publicly.
But we do all work together, and we have a common goal because everyone that makes beer in Georgia will win if this kind of legislation gets pushed forward.
I think, I've sat through numerous social media-based conferences and things like this, and I think when it comes to beer, seeing everyone says you got to have that human aspect to the brand itself, and I think social media, especially when small breweries like in the span of everything, small breweries like Sweetwater and Monday Night, in Reformation, who are up against a big challenge where, despite even lobbying to change a law, this Department of Revenue has made a determination and won't entertain any other versions of it, and no one has any input on it. So it shuts down their ability to make money like 48 other states basically allow. And social media has been the best way to show that even if they make different beers at different parts of the city, that they're united in the fact that we all win when these laws favor the small breweries. And apart from the things that they'll put on social media that show that there's a human aspect to it and they're engaging with followers and engaging with people, with this, this is especially something where they work so hard July 1st, you think, okay, that's the ray of hope. And then while all the brewers are out at the Great American Beer Festival in California or Colorado, they lay this down. And all the breweries have come together and saying, it doesn't matter if you're competitors, this is wrong. And social media has done a lot for impacting people saying, I can't believe this is going on. Who do I write to? Who do I yell at? Who do I get mad at? And without Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, things like that, I don't think people would have even noticed until they went to the brewery again. So it's that fast.
Yeah, it kind of sucks to wake up one morning and your job is to tell everybody, like, sorry, Georgia sucks, July 1st, we hired, since July 1st, we've hired 6 new people, not necessarily predicated on the income that we would make from the change in the law, but it certainly does help to justify those hires when we have additional income coming in from a legal change, and we have an unelected regulatory body who is saying to the consumer, you can't do this. So it's really being taken away from the consumer. It sucks for us, but really it's a penalty for you because you, up until recently, had the option to take beer from our business. We make a product and we can't sell it to you legally, which is insane. But at least there was a workaround, Up until July 1st, we were working on a charade where, you buy a souvenir glass, right? You get a souvenir glass. Everyone who was participating in Georgia beer culture knew that was the charade. They were willing to put up with it. We put up with it. And then there was this great ray of hope. We're going to change, at least it's a different charade, right? Oh, it's an admission to a tour, right? You're buying admission to a tour, but everyone knows what's really, we're trying to catch up. We're trying to catch up with the rest of the country. And, I went on a Southeast brewery tour as a freelancer prior to this across 6 different states in the Southeast. And at every single one of those, except for Mississippi, I was able to take beer to go in some form. Even in Mississippi, I was able to buy mead because it's considered a wine, like a honey wine. And that's another thing here in the state of Georgia is wineries are able to sell direct to you. You can go to a winery here in Georgia and they can sell you wine because it's an agricultural product. It's not a beer. So, as consumers, if this is a thing that you would like to have, it's really upon you to to stand up and say, hey, we want to join, we're united in beer. Here we are, like we want to be able to go 100 miles across the border and buy beer just like we can in our home state, so.
Basically, you guys picked the wrong conference to come to because we're all just pissed.
There is more beer, though.
Well, we talked a little bit about the spirit of working together as all craft brewers in relation to the regulation, but let's talk a little bit about competition. We know that earlier this year, kind of the big company Budweiser took shot at craft brewers as it relates to their practices and the whole macro type of thing. I guess I'm wondering, how do you guys interact with each other online digitally, and how do you approach, I guess, competition with other brewers?
Look, that wasn't very competitive, right? I think when I'm writing posts and when I'm planning out what our social presence is going to look like, it doesn't necessarily. It kind of, I don't want to say it does it in a vacuum because that makes it sound like it's not thought out, but what we do as a brewery is very unique. We strive to do things that other people aren't doing, and there have been a lot of opportunities for whether it's beer, a clothing product, a sponsorship, whatever it may be. There have been opportunities where it seemed like an obvious choice, but because so many people have been doing it, we've shied away from it. So as far as competitors, some breweries do try to put down big beer. They'll, you saw it with the Super Bowl commercial. A lot of people having a very strong backlash to that. We really try to stay out of that as much as possible. I think it doesn't really help our brand that much to tear anyone else down, especially craft beer. It's very rare to see craft breweries attacking other craft breweries, but there have been instances, especially around legal disputes, copyright things, that kind of stuff. But my approach to do it is, I treat our presence to a certain degree as my own personal voice. So when I see Jonathan post something about his weird love affair for Bryan Adams, I like to chime in on that, And there's a very strange full-size cutout poster in their bathroom if you ever get the chance to take a tour.
All their fermenters are named after Bryan Adams songs if you haven't been to the brewery. So Cuts Like a Knife, and those are the fermenter names. Have you ever loved a woman?
So it's not so much about competition, which at the end of the day we all are. We're all making a product and we're all trying to sell as much of that product as we possibly can. But I like to think that we're also all craft beer fans, and I'm not going to drink a Sweetwater every time I reach for a beer. I love drinking local. I like supporting other local breweries, and I like to have fun with them online. It's a great opportunity. We see incredible reaction from our fan bases. And maybe we get a little crossover in those fan bases when that kind of thing happens. So it's a win-win for us. I mean, from my perspective, it's a no-brainer that we should have as much fun as we can, in a tasteful way most of the time. There's the occasional mom joke, but
I think at the end of the day, our social media the goal is to get people to like us more, so that they will buy more of our products. Like, that's kind of what we're trying to do. And when we interact with other breweries online, we see a lot more engagement from people, and I think people love seeing that back and forth from brands. We try not to engage with a brewery unless we know who is behind that account, right? So I'm not going to call out some random brewery in California's mom, but I'll call out Sweetwater's mom because I took her out to dinner. But getting to know the people behind the accounts, I think, also makes it's easier for you to go back and forth, because we don't want to put something out there that's kind of like, that's kind of on the line, but I think it's funny, so maybe it'll play. You want to know how that brand is going to respond before you put that out there, because it really could blow up in your face. But that's what she said.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the beer, it's about joy, and so watching the way that they interact we have more of an active listening approach to what it is that they're doing right now. We're very small by comparison to those breweries. We have, maybe 2,000 followers as opposed to, in the double digits. So we're still at a stage where we're just actively listening. We're not really in competition in terms of social media engagement because we have our own concerns, like Brian was saying. He's just sort of these internal standards that you have to meet. But in the market, it's very competitive, and so not speaking to social media specifically, but our brands are very competitive in the market, and because we have the system that we have in Georgia, and I hate to keep coming back to this, but we have a main competitor, and that is Anheuser-Busch or Adept Beverage, who is able to produce beer here and sell it, and they're the only brewery that's able to do that. So, we're not legally allowed to sell beer, but they have production facilities here, and then they can distribute their beer to retailers, and they're the only ones that are allowed to do that, which I find reprehensible. Yeah, so it's not competitive probably in the same way that we would like it to be.
When it comes to competition, I think from a numbers game, I think we know the numbers all the time, but maybe for everyone who loves beer but doesn't kind of see where we are, that in the past 2 weeks, the United States has crossed 4,000 breweries, active breweries, whether by contract, brick and mortar, et cetera, that they're producing beer that you can buy in stores on taps. That's still less than we had in the late 1800s, which is they had about 200 more in the late 1800s than we do in 2015. And then collectively, of all the breweries that are considered craft by the Brewers Association, which is a non-legal term, you produce 6 million barrels or less of beer annually, and 1 barrel is 31 gallons, so you guys can math that up. So there's 4,000 breweries, all operating under 6 million barrels a year. The biggest ones include Sierra Nevada, Boston Beer Company, Yuengling. And of those breweries, including Reformation and Sweetwater and Monday Night, and as far as land is concerned, you've heard Red Brick and Terrapin and such. All of those breweries, give or take a percentage point, produce about 9% of the volume of beer in America, barely 10%. They employ more than 50% of the workforce in the brewing industry, but they are, let's say, 9 to 10%, depending on what numbers come out, which happens every other week. Total. Absolutely total. So 90% of the volume in America, and a large volume of consumption in America is Bud, Miller, Coors, imports, etc. So craft, as you know it, is barely 10% across the board. So when it comes to competition, you can view it as these, like Monday Night and Sweetwater, are competing for a small percentage of overall volume, but in actuality, they're really working towards moving the needle the other way. So craft is larger than 10% in the U.S. So
yeah, I mean, if we can work together to get that number from 10 to 11%, we've all just added 10% growth to our business.
Get drinking.
All right, well, we talked a little bit earlier about the fans on you guys' social accounts, but let's talk a little bit about the trolls. We know that people are like very diehard fans when it relates to their beer. They get tattoos. They name their children after their favorite IPA. How do you guys handle, I guess, the online negativity as it relates to people who just despise your brand and want it to burn to the ground?
Before they go into their stories, and they have some, like I typically, before they even announce the beer, sometimes I'll already jump to the story that Sweetwater Monday Night has a beer coming out. And I'm always surprised how fast someone will be like, that sucks. And I'm like, it's not even brewed yet. Like when I announced Terrapin's Walking Dead beer, someone's like, this beer's gonna be crap. And I'm like, and I know Spike, the brewmaster of Terrapin, and he's like, I don't even know the recipe for that yet. And I'm like, well, dude, it sucks, so give up. So it's crazy that you'll like publish a beer coming out on Twitter and somebody is like, they're stupid. I'm like, well, you go, enjoy that. Someone hug you.
I think the fact that there is a decent amount of negativity is really because there's so much passion and engagement, right? Like, you're not going to have people being diehard fans of you without having some people hate your guts, and that's kind of you have to take both. Me doing all the social media, and I feel like I'm talking to myself most of the time when I'm posting, I take it pretty personally. But we try to either there's some we ignore, and some that we try to respond to offline. So we try not to take on anything publicly because we know that it is public, and then that makes it more of a bigger issue, right? Like, if someone responds to me on Twitter, there's a good chance that no one else is following that person, and so it's just going to hide there. I don't want to. I'll DM them and say, hey, can you shoot me an email? Let's talk about this. Same with Facebook. We'll do. They have a bad review of our brewery, and we'll Facebook message them and say, hey, sorry you had that experience. Here's a couple of free tour passes. Come back. In general, I'm talking. I think you just trolled me. Now I forgot what I was going to say, but it was real good. Oh yeah, in general, we've actually, I think, had better luck creating really strong fans out of those mishaps and mix-ups than we have, maintaining enemies. So if someone has an issue with our product and we reach out to them directly, I think that's still pretty rare. And if we can get them to the brewery and they can meet the brewmaster and we can explain what might have went wrong or give them something for their trouble, then we can generally turn that situation around.
It takes a little while to kind of be able to step back and recognize what complaints are legitimate complaints about a real quality issue or some kind of a problem that's a legitimate concern, and the people who are just, like Reed's talking about, just are automatically going to say, this sucks. Old beer, there might be an off batch or anything like that. Those are all things that happen all the time, and just like Jonathan's saying, you got to deal with those in an appropriate way. But you also have to be able to tune out all the people that are just going to be negative for negativity's sake. At our size now, it's really easy to kind of look at us as kind of the big dog in town, and we get accused of having sold out and having gone mainstream and all these things. And yeah, we try to stay off that one, actually. You have to tune it out, because at the end of the day, we are doing well. We had 35% growth last year, and that's pretty good. So there's a very vocal minority in craft beer, and it's they're very loud, they're very angry, and they seem like they're everywhere, like around every corner. But you kind of have to learn how to tune those people out and just keep your ears open for the issues that you can actually fix, because you're not going to change a lot of those people's minds, and you have to learn to live with that.
Yeah, we're perfect. We never get any negativity ever. No, I'm just kidding. We do, though, proactively plan for scenarios where we will have to justify what it is we're saying, because we're a values-based business, and one of our co-founders is a pastor in the Protestant church. There are always scenarios where, as someone who didn't come up with them from their home brewing days, I can see, and as someone who is just participating, I can see sort of some of those flags are being raised as we get ready to prepare to say things. And so I'm always having those conversations like, okay guys, what do we say when, are you guys prepared for this to happen, for these comments to come through? And so we have little preparatory sessions. Yeah, sort of like wargaming. Yeah, like, prepare to have an appropriate response to the trolls, or just not respond. So prepare to not respond. Yeah, I mean, I was a teacher prior to to joining the brewery. I taught middle school, and planned ignoring is actually a strategy that you use for problem students. So you plan to ignore the behavior, and attention is a currency. You're not going to reward someone who gives you that kind of attention unless it's a legitimate issue, like Brian was saying.
I have an ex-boss that has worked in the beer industry for 20 plus years, and he said one thing that sticks with me every time I see a comment about a brewery, even just one like I'm friends with, or say something about my site, or any beer that you like or something like that, don't poke the troll. And I think it's a good rule of thumb when you walk in, because there's always a slippery slope into what that's going to cost you, because you don't know who this person is. They're keyboard jockeys in their mom's basement, theoretically. That's the way I picture it. And it's like, do you want to engage in that fight that you're not going to win because they'll say anything to get the rise out of you? Like, they will say anything to try to goad you into a larger argument. So sometimes it's safer, don't poke the troll. Just walk away from it, because your brand stays intact when you don't do that.
Yeah.
Exactly. They have nothing to lose but their internet connection.
To kind of piggyback on what Jess was saying about those standard, I guess, operating procedures that they've kind of come up with on their side, I guess I want to know what some of you guys' approaches are to when you're scheduling out your content for the week. What are you looking to include in, like, on Twitter or on Instagram? Like, what types of posts are you guys looking at sending out to your followers?
What types of posts on which social
Like, are you using any
platforms,
type of user-generated content, or are you just, posting photos to Instagram?
Yeah,
or?
most of ours is created in-house. We're not at that point where we have really enough. We have a lot of followers, but our strategy is to create content in-house and share that. So it's almost all of it is strategically planned by a team that cooperates on, well, what are we talking about this month? What are we planning to send out? So most of the content that we send out is all strategically planned, but managed by moderators who can respond in the moment. So, I would say 10% of the content, maybe even less than that, is spontaneous, unless it's responding to people who are engaging with that content, and that's all 100%. Obviously, not you can't plan for how people could respond, but our content day to day, week to week is almost always planned ahead of time.
100% of our content is spontaneous, and that is probably bad, but we don't have time or money to plan ahead. So, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't want to push more than one thing at once, and so I try not to have posts too close together, or if I do have them close together, have them be about the same thing, whether it's pushing an event or selling a hypercolor t-shirt or pushing a new beer. And then I want to make sure that I have a few posts in every platform per week. But that's kind of the extent of it for us right now.
I just drink a lot, write a lot, and tell everybody about it. And so I found a lot, I used to I've tried to switch up Twitter a little bit more. Like, if I publish an article to Twitter about, like, I think about what I've done today with Ame Gang has a new beer and posting about that, it's different when I put it on Facebook, and it's different and what I would publish to Instagram, because they'll share a photo that I'll put on my Instagram. So I never want to see any of my social media platforms look the same, but they're always kind of partnered together, because it's kind of, I wouldn't say breaking news in a sense, like breaking news in the real world and there's breaking news in the beer world, which is much different. But it's just, you kind of want to look like I created something for Facebook, I created something for Instagram, and I created something for Twitter. And the rest of the time it's just story links, or I'm drinking here, or at a brewery here, but I'm mostly drinking at weird hours of the day, which is fun.
The norm.
You have a tough life, Reed. It's really all about balance for us. I would say that from a channel perspective, we use the Big Man 3 like most people. And on this side of the fence is probably information, and that's going to be more Twitter. And over here we've got more branding opportunities, and that's Instagram. So Facebook's somewhere in the middle between the two of those, especially with the event feature, obviously. And it's not a hard and fast rule, it kind of slides back and forth all the time. But for the most part, we try to break it up more or less like that. And it's just making sure that you have a good variety of content. It's very easy to get bogged down in sponsorships and new market news, and it's important to us, but it might not be important to someone who's scrolling through their Instagram feed at 5 o'clock at the bar. They want to see cool stuff like beer being made, or photos of pretty beer packages, or beer in nice glasses. Beer porn, right? So it's finding the balance between showing off your product and making people want to make that purchase, and also telling people about the nonprofit that you're organizing, or that your Spin for Kids on October 17th. If anyone wants to go down to Rutledge, Georgia and ride 28 miles with me, please help. So it's finding that balance and pushing it on the right channels where, like Jonathan's saying, it's not all back to back to back and just cramming information or on the other side, just cramming images down people's throats. We want to find a healthy balance where people can stay engaged in our feeds and not get tired of just the same stream of content.
Very cool. All right. Now, it looks like you guys have like the most exciting jobs in the world. You get to drink beer, you get to post about it on social. I guess we want to know, what is the hardest part about what you guys do?
I would say the hours, because the hours when people are drinking are the hours when I don't want to work. But I have to work, and then I have to work all the other hours too.
I do a lot of other things besides, like I'm responsible for the approvals of all of our brands, and so I kind of have like 4 jobs right now, and I'm in the middle of one while I'm talking to you. So I would say that holding all those balls in the air, while, juggling everything at the same time while we're trying to grow a business in this climate is the hardest thing, because we are a very, very small company. So the jobs that I have would normally be distributed across several different people, and it's the same with our founders and our brewers and our sales representatives. We all have multiple jobs and multiple responsibilities, so it makes it even more difficult to grow our business, because we're managing several different responsibilities that would normally be spread out.
I think almost the polar opposite of that is what we run into. At a brewery, you've got production, so that's brewing. You've got packaging, which is the bottling line or the can line, keg line, whatever it may be. You've got the warehouse, you've got accounting, you've got the sales team, you've got, well, in our case, we have a field marketing team that's an entirely separate entity. You've got merch, so there's tons of different moving parts at the brewery, and a lot of the time, those parts don't talk to each other, especially the guys that are in production. They're, doing things all day long. They're not sitting in front of a computer. So it can be challenging to make sure that you're able to plan out like a full month of content and hitting on all cylinders and making sure that we have all the information about the new beer that's coming out. We've got the information about the new cans that just came in, or where we're shipping the beer from the warehouse guys. So it's making sure that you can bring all those moving pieces together into one place and getting all that information together in a way that makes sense for the public.
I'm same with all these brands here, but with a national site about beer, that there's 3 or 4 time zones, there are tens of thousands of beers that are either new to the market or returning to the market, and trying to figure out how my reader base wants to know about those, or if they do. It kind of keeps you awake at night. I have give or take 3 to 4 writers, and there's a difference between, say, Sweetwater, which is in 10 plus states, putting out a beer, versus how would you echo Reformation, which is in your backyard, and you want to make sure that information is included, considering that you're just miles from the brewery, to have that on your site. And then the thing about beer is that it is a kind of a paradigm where people thought beer, if a brewery opens, they're in every state, and they're not. There are breweries in Georgia that do not reach all over Georgia, and then there's some breweries that are in 3 states, 5 states, 7 states, 10 states, and waiting that information for how people are reading your site and interacting with your site is hard to do. As far as Beer Street Journal is concerned, there's a headlines, kind of intermediary line where it's kind of like, this is cool, but it might not be headline material, and then there's a feed on the left, which is new releases and seasonal returns and things like that. And much like anybody who has a successful website will probably tell you, I don't copy and paste press releases. Everything's going to be written and rewritten about what the story is to make it unique for the user and why they came to your site. And if you think there's 4,000 breweries and each one of them has 5 beers as a year-round offering, and then say another 5 seasonals, the math starts in aggregate starts to add up. And so how do you cover it all? And I could have a team of writers and miss it, because if there's a brewery you haven't heard of in California, are you going to click it? Are you going to read it? No, that's like for the people that are within 15 miles of that brewery in California. So it's hard to weight the reach of a brewery and get it all, because every day a brewery goes to another state, adds distribution, or adds another beer, or has some news, or gets a new fermenter, expands capacity. So it gets. I'm already having nightmares. It's complicated when the news is constantly churning. And even with the 3 here, I mean, they'll have a new beer every 3 months, and that's just 3 breweries right here. So that's 9 entries about the people here.
We only do that to give you ulcers.
He never liked me. I understand.
All right, well, that about wraps up our time. We're going to save the last 10 minutes for question and answers. So, yes.
Yeah, I come from the restaurant bar industry, and I'm just curious, bartenders and servers can be really huge influencers if you do business in that segment. Do you have any specific efforts to engage these folks through social media, or is that your salespeople's job, or do you just hope it happens? Because I've been influenced to try a beer by bartenders, and they learned it somewhere, maybe by drinking it, maybe by, having somebody help them try it.
Yeah, we have, we get our sales team to do that primarily, so we don't have like a specific strategy on social media to target bartenders. We have tried some SEO type stuff and some blog posts that target them, but we try not to target too much with our social media because inevitably we're leaving out someone as well. But we've also really had terrible luck like finding bartenders who consistently use email and Twitter. So in person with the salespeople is generally what we find works best.
Facebook is very high for bartender rejections. I'm serious. Very high. We have Facebook, separate Facebook. But really,
We do, let me just real quick, we do use our sales team. That's part of what we ask them to do is to form those personal connections with their account holders. So it might not necessarily be the bartender, but it might be the owner of the bar or the general manager or something like that. It's not a requirement. It's not something that happens 90% of the time, but it is an additional tool in their arsenal when they're trying to sell in tap handles or run a special promotion or something. Those personal relationships that are fostered through social media can go a long way in making this successful.
And essentially, we are business to business, so I would say that we are strategically looking at that as some of the things we have in place are strategically business to business, offering added value to them in terms of events and support, visiting them like all the breweries do. But in addition to that, specifically event-driven support, like posters and other print materials. So that part of what my job is to be an intermediary between the bar or restaurant and the event that they're planning, and then to provide support to them for carrying out that event successfully. So sort of guiding them, training them, teaching them, giving them hints and tips, and also actual physical collateral, like here's a poster, and our distributor facilitates the print of that because they're obligated to provide that as a service. So,
Yes, you have a question?
Just kind of to add on to his question before, my question to you guys, have you tried to reach out to like hospitality industry LinkedIn groups and Facebook groups and stuff to reach people there for that kind of bartender, waiter, waitress kind of niche? Is that something you guys have had any success with or you've done?
I would say yes, at least for Reformation Brewery. We are the primary beer at the Renaissance Waverly in Atlanta, and some other hotels forthcoming. So yes.
We've had a little bit of success working with We & Co., which they've kind of changed their business model, but they are kind of a database of service industry, people, resumes and whatnot, and teaming up with them with their mailing list to get people to come to the brewery in the service industry, and anyone who comes who's in the service industry gets in for free. And we find that if we can get someone to the brewery, we can turn them into a fan. I'll just be honest, we have not used LinkedIn really at all.
We have any other questions? All right, well, let's thank our panel. We appreciate you guys coming.